Right, now we'll look at this expedition to Antarctica. You couldn't really make this stuff up. It's about a bungled propaganda expedition which is now stuck in ice in Antarctica as we speak. They've been stuck there for a week. This expedition has been led by UNSW climate scientist, Professor of Climate Science at the UNSW, Prof Turney. Is stuck there with all his eco-alarmist mates and activists, media and so on, in non-existent sea ice. What he's trying to do is research Antarctica to see what effect global warming is having, and is comparing that to Mawson's trip to the Antarctic, to the same area, to Commonwealth Bay in 1912, just over 100 years ago. And we can see what the difference is. That is that there's a hell of a lot more ice now than there was in 1912. Here's a picture of, here's a film of Commonwealth Bay taken by Mawson in 1912. You can see that Commonwealth Bay is completely ice-free, sea ice-free at that time. They've been stuck there since Christmas Eve, and a Chinese icebreaker was sent to rescue them. Couldn't get through, in fact got stuck itself, and it called for help. Then the Australian icebreaker Aurora Australis was sent down to try to rescue all of them, and it's had to abandon its rescue attempts in 4-metre thick ice. I don't think they'll be going anywhere anytime soon. Now, this expedition was really to assess the ongoing impacts of global warming in the Antarctic region, and as we can see, what the ongoing impact is that there's a hell of a lot more ice than there used to be. But this hasn't been reported, of course. The trip was a propaganda exercise financed by the BBC, Australia's ABC, and also independent eco-alarmists and other media interests such as The Guardian. They've said that they're down in Antarctica, but they haven't mentioned that they're stuck in the sea ice. But this is a message from Professor Prof Turney, UNSW's Professor of Climate Change, who is on the ship. He said, I quote, "We're stuck in our own experiment. Sea ice is disappearing due to climate change, but here the ice is building up," unquote. Yeah, I guess for the warmist this is all embarrassing, since they're stuck in supposedly melting and non-existent sea ice, and kind of a reality check really, as this boatload of alarmists are stuck in the ice, and they have been for a week now. So I hope it lowers the level of hubris that we are seeing in Australian universities. We look around the country, and what we can see is people like Tim Flannery, who is a Gaia worshipper, as we know from other videos I've done on him. We've also got Peter Kristoff, who is another activist, alarmist scientist, whatever you want to call them, at Melbourne University. He says we're going to get 4 degrees centigrade by 2070. He said, "I think this is conservative under the circumstances," unquote. The thing is that this guy is advising the government on policy issues. This is where we get things like the $9 billion carbon tax and the $10 billion climate fund. All, of course, complete wastes of money. All at a time when there is no global warming, full stop. The temperature record proves this. This is the Hadkrut 3 temperature record. We've got another alarmist here. This is Professor Clive Hamilton from Charles Sturt University. He's not happy with 80% cuts in CO2 by 2050. He thinks we need 90% cuts. He's a member of the Climate Change Authority, which hopefully is going to be disbanded by the new Australian government. Next in this rogues gallery, we've got Professor Frank Jotzo. He's another climate nutter. He says that people who block action on climate change are, quote, dinosaurs, unquote. These guys have a lot in common. I mean, they love communism. For example, I've got a quote here from Jotzo. He contrasts Australia with China. He says that China's climate change minister has been in Warsaw for days. This is at the COP19 meeting. Of course, China's interested in this, more interested in these COP talks. They're going to get money. Hello? Hello? Is anybody there inside your brain, Jotzo? I mean, Australia's got to pay and China's got to receive because they're supposedly a, quote, developing, unquote, country, aren't they? So of course they're more interested than we are in these silly talks. And here's another quote from Jotzo. Perhaps it is because China has such a positive story to tell about action to change the trajectory of its economy and its emissions, unquote. Unbelievable nonsense there from Jotzo. Next in the rogues gallery is John Cook. Well, unqualified at the moment, but he's operating out of University of Queensland. And this is the infamous cartoonist who runs the dodgy so-called scientific website, Skeptical Science. It's full of claptrap, easily disproven. Just a bit tired of these wankers, so I'll just go on to temperature graph, which shows the Antarctic. MSU RSS graph shows Antarctic temperatures. A slow decline over many decades is what we are observing. Not bullshit alarmism created in a model. This is reality. Next guy we've got here is Professor Anderson. This is a UK climate specialist. He says he smells because of fear of climate change. He doesn't shower because he's trying to reduce his CO2 footprint. Another loon. Next we've got Professor Karoli, David Karoli from Melbourne University. He's an all-out crackpot. He's just got 1.9 million to predict 6 degrees centigrade of warming. Here's his prediction by 2100. He's always talking alarmism. He's a member of the Climate Change Authority, which I hope will be disbanded quite soon by the new government. As you can see in the graph, his prediction and the CSIRO's prediction, which got 1.9 billion in Australian taxpayer funds, has predicted 6 degrees centigrade by 2070. They're even more extreme than Karoli. And both are way above the IPCC, which has predicted 3 degrees by 2100. None of them are within any cooey of any possible reality. I've shaded in the region there where we're probably going to end up, and it's between plus 0.5 degrees and minus 0.5 degrees by 2100. Of course, the temperatures are driven by the sun. CO2 is pretty well irrelevant. Here's the next one in the Rose Gallery, Professor Matthew England from UNSW. He just got 2.5 million reward for his alarmism. Here's a little bit of reality. Arctic temperatures. They've collapsed in the last 3 years, more than 2.5 degrees down. So we've already started the next dive into the little ice age, which is coming. And this is all driven by the sun, which has gone into a very quiet phase, very similar to the Dalton minimum period. Solar cycle 24 is very similar to solar cycle 5, and solar cycle 25 is probably going to be very similar to solar cycle 6. The sun is going into hibernation. It's going to be very, very similar to the Dalton minimum, which we had in the early 1800s. And if we're lucky, it will be no worse than that. But if we're not lucky, we could drop to a new Maunder minimum, which will bring us into a new little ice age, just as severe as that we had in the early 1600s, that saw the Thames freeze over, saw the River Rhine freeze over, that saw terrible cold conditions and millions of people dying throughout the world because of starvation. We hope that doesn't happen as severe as that, but we are definitely looking at a new cold period. Global warming is fiction. It's not going to happen. So you better prepare yourself for the coming cold. The sun is reaching a new minimum. Sunspots are declining dramatically. Solar activity is declining. And the sun is now going into an extended period of hibernation.